Prime Minister Barnaby Joyce has just begun a media
There's
conference
no
that's
way
taken
you want to
listening.
see a human being treated in those ways. We understand you've got to have strong law and order. There's a time, unfortunately, if it's required that people have to be incarcerated. We understand that, but in a process of incarceration, especially for juveniles, needs to come with a more deft hand, and that was what we saw last night. Is beyond the pale. So that issue will have to be dealt with.
Do you have faith in the Northern Territory's justice system after last night?
Look, I have a strong belief that we need to have that investigation conducted ASAP, and it has to be transparent. What we'll have with a Royal Commission is the power to compel witnesses to get discovery of evidence. This facility, what's called Don Dow, whatever facility, has got to be, really got to get through and say, how did people get themselves in the position where they decided it was appropriate to act the way they did? We understand the difficulties in dealing with youths in detention, but still it requires immense patience, and that's what we expect. What we saw there, especially the picture of the person with the hood on them, this is not Australia. That's not how it works. So this is going to have to be dealt with.
The government's working on its terms of reference. Do you think the scope should be limited to Don Dale, or should it look at Indigenous incarceration more broadly?
Well, I think it has to look at Don Dale, but I don't know how. The wider you make it, the longer it takes. We want this to get moving as quickly as possible and get to a conclusion as quickly as possible. I think this is an issue. We don't want this issue to be investigated for years. We want it to be done succinctly and quickly. And if they discover further evidence through that, then further decisions can be made after that.
If there are
Excuse me.
in that system, though, wouldn't you want to know about them?
Yeah, but well, certainly if further information comes to light, but I understand that, but I don't want. The broader you make any Royal Commission, the longer it takes. If you make it incredibly broad, it can take years. You see that with the mistreatment of children that we're seeing with the investigation to child abuse. Now, I don't think people want this one to go for years. They want it to get to the source of this problem as quickly as possible and deliver an outcome as quickly as possible. Excuse me. Sorry about that.
Some of these photos are 2 years old. You guys were in government at the time. Presumably these photos were taken. Do you think the checks and balances of the justice system need to be looked at, or what involvement would your Indigenous Affairs Minister have in this?
Well, I'm absolutely certain that if Nigel Scullion had known about this, Nigel Scullion would have acted. The question is, why didn't we know about this? And how are we going to find out? I'm absolutely certain if Nigel Scullion had known about this, Nigel Scullion would have acted on this. The issue, of course, that we have is that we didn't know about this. So how are we going to find out who knew what? The Royal Commission does that because you're compelled to give evidence and you do it under oath.
Comparisons have been drawn to offshore detention, particularly the treatment of children. Do you think that's a fair comparison to make?
I'll let other people make those decisions, but at this point in time, let's deal with the issue that's confronting us. And that's what we saw on Four Corners last night.
Have you been in talks with Nigel about it? Will you be sending...
No, I haven't. Excuse me. At this point in time, I haven't been in discussions with anybody. I've been listening to the Prime Minister this morning. I think I think everybody, after they watched the program, you didn't really need to have a discussion. You could pretty well determine exactly what was going to be said. I listened to the Prime Minister on AM this morning, and what he said is precisely what I would have said. So that'll do me. If I need to, I will. I'll probably have you on to the Prime Minister today about it.
Any comments on last week's Productivity Commission report? It was fairly damning in a lot of the nationals.
The Productivity Commission report is a report to government. I'm very happy with the work we're doing. I'm happy with our country of origin labelling system so that people clearly know what country their products are coming from. I stand behind our Foreign Investment Review Board guidelines. Why? Because I understand where the Productivity Commission is coming from, but I also understand where the people of Australia are coming from, and they want stronger controls over who owns what and stronger investigatory powers to discover who owns what, and we're going to deliver them that. There are other things within the productivity report which I agree with, such as some of the vegetation laws are too prescriptive, and as they're too prescriptive, they restrict our capacity to become more productive. And these are things that the state governments should look at. We've got to ask the question: do you want to be able to develop land to get a higher productivity, or do you not? And sometimes you have to move. These trees are private property. Sometimes they have to be moved so you can get more production from the land. Excuse me. Golly.
Okay, we might leave that there with Barnaby Joyce clearing his throat there on the downtown Tamworth. That was live from Tamworth. The Deputy Prime Minister Barnaby Joyce condemning the practices at the Don Dale Detention Centre exposed on the Four Corners program.